Now, what kind of project are we willing to create? We are not willing to create any sort of this project, but we are intentionally willing to create a HANA database project. Okay, which whose purpose would be just to contain the data relevant to HANA. I'll just say next. Here we can give any sort of name. So I can say BTP DB employee central. My bad. Yeah. So we would be having a employee central database. That central database we would be using for all our data provisioning purpose. I'll just go next. We would have a DB module. So as we have a DB and SRV in CAP project, same way we do have a DB module over here. I'll just go next. Then we have to give some sort of namespace if we want to. Okay, like we gave it in a CAP, but in case of a database, as it would be a reusable one, we ideally avoid giving any sort of namespace. We'll just keep it as a blank. In case you want to give any sort of names, schema name, we can give. So for example, I'll just say BTP underscore DB underscore employee central. Okay, and we would be right now not generating any Cloud Foundry instance. If we generate like this, we would have a HANA Cloud. Yeah. Now this is my schema name. If I just go one more step further, then it would ask whether you want to generate any HDI. Now, one thing I guess by now you would also be knowing, whenever I say HDI, it is nothing but my HANA database container. I mean, it's called HANA database instance, but ultimately what it generates is a database container. So whenever someone says you HDI, it means it is nothing but a HANA database container. This is what you can visualize of. So I can say no, right now I don't want to. We would generate it separately. And where actually we want it to be stored. So for example, I want it to be stored in a HDI DB dev HDI shared. I'll just say finish. So all we are currently trying to do is, rather than having all the data getting stored over here, rather than having tables getting generated from CAP project, we would be generating the table and all the HANA artifact in a HANA database project, and we would be consuming this going forward. If you want to see everything at once, I guess we should have a projects open. It just opened this project dedicatedly because it was only asking us to actually focus over here. Okay. So now we are in a DB Central. If you see, what do we have over here? We do have a DB over here. This is a module where we would be writing the code to generate all of our tables. Yes. Let's just open this. Okay. Now what do we have over here? We do have a SRC. So SRC is nothing but a source. So what this DB should contain, that everything would come from a SRC. That everything would actually come from this SRC. Okay, and we do have a dedicated MTA YML. So unless if you see, whenever we were working with a CAP project, we were generating a MTA file. Okay, but whenever you are working with a native HANA project, that would be by default in nature a MTA project. Okay, now if you remember, we had also added this target container explicitly because the MTA file was something that we generated using a command. Do we remember what was that? That was a CDS add MTA. So that particular command we used to generate a MTA file for the deployment purpose of a CAP project. But when it comes to a DB native HANA project, this project is by default a MTA based project. It does have a HANA container. In case we want, we can give it a dedicated name. For example, I'll just say HDI underscore employee central. So this is my central database. Now this is a resource, right? So if I change the name of resource, what should I change? I should also change the name of the requires module. So I'll just change that. It does have a schema. It means whatever tables get generated would be part of a single schema. Okay. Now we are over here. Now in the SRC, we can generate different kind of HANA artifact. Here in the agenda, I have mentioned 3, but we would be learning plenty of them because this is how HANA Cloud is segregated. What all kind of information a HANA Cloud can contain. So it can contain a table, a view, roles, and everything. If you want more detail, you can open this hidden in file HDI config. So if you just click on this, if you see, it can contain HDBL application name, calculation view, the txt file, create table, database function, index, and everything. Okay, so it contains all this information. I'll just close this for now. Okay, now I want to generate a table. Okay, that should store my employees information. Okay, so I'll just go over here in my SRC. Whatever thing that we want to generate, we should write it in a SRC. So in case I want to write a table, there is no convention as such, but I myself prefer segregating, or I can say separating out all the different kind of database artifact on in a folder. So for example, if I want to generate a tables, I'll just say tables over here. Hey, sorry, not over here. It should be in a SRC. Actually, there is some issue with my mouse. 1 second. Okay. Here you would be finding whether it's getting generated at right path or not. So I'll just say tables. I'll just go over here in the tables over here. Now I want one table to get generated. For example, I'll just give a new file. Okay. And here I would try to generate a table. So whenever we are generating a component or database artifact in a HANA one, we have a extension based concept. Okay. So we have to generate a file with a right set of extensions. So for example, I want to generate an employee. I want to generate a table for employees, and here I can say HDB table. And I'll just say create, or I can say okay. So it would generate a file. Now this particular file is ultimately responsible for generating that particular table. Okay. Now we, I hope we all are also aware of HANA system, right? And there are plenty of concept called data compression is into place. We do have column based indexing, and all the columns are having an index tables and everything. Why is that so? Because the table that we are generating over here are a column table, correct? So we do have two kind of table in HANA system. One is row based table, where if I do have a data, or I can say I do have a set of data like this, then my scanning as well as insertion and everything would go row by row. That is called a row table. But whenever I do have a column table, instead of going row by row, it would do all the searching, indexing, and everything based on a column. That is a property of HANA. That's why always create a column table in a HANA system. So I'll just go over here and I'll say, I want a column table to get generated. So the moment you start typing, you would get a value help. So I can say, I want a column table to get generated. Now here I can give a name of the table. So for example, I want to give, let's just say empdb dot, let's just say employees. So for example, I want to some sort of namespace. So there is a namespace. Why I avoid giving this namespace in the project generation time? Because I want a different namespace for different purpose. I want a namespace for view. I want a namespace for table. I can also choose that. So that's why I just didn't give any namespace at the project creation level. Now here I have to give all the column that I want to generate. Okay. So this is nothing but your pure Oracle SQL based Oracle SQL type database generation. You do have a schema. You have to define what all thing your table should contain, what all thing your views should contain, all the column, its name, its particular, I can say data type, what is the primary key, any constraint you want to write, everything and anything you would be specifying over here. So for example, I want to have an ID column. What would be the type? So one thing, there are two kind of data types. Whenever I am going with a cap, then cap ideally have a data type called string, integer, okay, some sort of timestamp, or I mean, all the cap data types are this sort of primitive data type. Whenever I say I do have a HANA, it would come up with a SQL data types. What do I mean by SQL data type? While writing any sort of SQL script or any sort of SQL table generation, how do I give the measure? How do I give what is the kind of my table, or let's just say what is the type of my column? I can give n varchar, a varchar, let's just say a timestamp, okay, boolean, this sort of thing. So these are my SQL data types. If you just say control space over here, you would start getting all of them. So for example, I want n varchar, I can say n varchar. If you see, it is giving me a help. I want it of 36 character because I want to replace my this employee table over here, which is a table currently. And how do I know it is a table? We have seen that, right? We open our data container. We had opened our data container sometime back in a HANA cloud. We would be opening it also again. So that particular data container, this CUID is generating a ID of 36 character, right? And what is this internally? This is a table. But whenever I am saying employee service, this is generating a view. But as this is a table, I don't want also it to be a table. I also want it to be a synonym of view. And that view would be getting the data from the table that we are generating. So I don't want this to be a table anymore. Okay, and that's why I am generating a particular table in a centralized container. So for example, I do have ID, which is getting auto generated. So for example, I also want to give some sort of ID which the user can also manipulate in. Okay, so this from a future perspective, as a part of one of the capabilities of CAP, we would be learning. I am also introducing one column called, let's just say, um, EMP ID EXT. EXT, it means whatever external, whatever is something that would be visible to the user. Okay, so for example, we generated, I can say, we had generated one short of GUID, right? This sort of GUID we used while actually adding any sort of information to the database, because this is a unique ID. But can I, if an employee enters in my organization, can I tell him, okay, this is your employee ID, just remember this? It would be very hectic, right? But instead, what would be his employee ID? This is a ID which would be a unique ID, which would be stored for sure. But when I say a employee ID, it would be something that an employee can remember. I can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This sort of employee ID it would be. Or for example, it would be Sumit underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or anything. But this is something that the employee can remember. So I can say an external purpose. We want something which would be unique in itself, and something which would be easy for the employee to remember, so he can think this as his employee ID. Okay, so that's why we generated it like this. Now I want it to be, let's just say, of 255 characters. Along with this, what do we have? We do have name, email ID, and department. So I can say I want a name, which would be again 255 character, email ID, and I can say department, be a department ID, because we have a remote, I can say, reference relation. Again, it would be a 36 character. Now, along with this, we are also giving some sort of managed aspect. So when I say I am giving a managed aspect, what it would generate? It would generate 4 more columns, right? Created by and all this. So we should have a column with the exact name. So I can say created at over here. Just close this. We are over here. I can say I want a created at column. Let me just type that. Created at, and whenever I say created at, it is nothing but a timestamp that we are storing, that when this record was created. Then I want a created by. Remember, whenever I do have a synonym, whenever I am connecting a centralized database table and I want to expose that, the name of the column should match exactly. Okay, why is it so? Because if it doesn't match, the system won't be knowing from which column I can pick the data for the relevant column. Okay, so here I want this, and let's just say the created by. In case I want a created by, what I can get it as a, let's just say here it is maximum length 255. So I can say and varchar 255. I want same for the modified at. Okay, so we generated a table which is having all this information. Along with that, whenever I am saying I am generating a table, what it should have, definitely a primary key. Here it is saying it is a key. So if I want to give the same information in a particular database table, I can say I do have a primary key. And here you can specify n number of keys specified by colon, whatever you like. I do have only one primary key, so I am just specifying